Ms. Harper, could you talk a little bit about the reform movement that's taking place in local education and some of the inherent problems that you see with it?
Well, first of all, I call it so-called reforms because I really care about real reform in public education. And in the 6 years that the state has had a large presence after the takeover of our schools in 2005, the reforms are minuscule. The results of the reforms are minuscule at best. They're not very successful. 83% of the schools are still in a failing status, failing either D or F rated schools. That's pathetic considering the amount of money and the amount of attention that's been paid to our schools within the last 6 years. Many of our lowest performing schools continue to be the lowest performing schools. And while the Recovery School District touts the great gains that they've made, those gains are not enough to meet the growth targets, which means that as a whole, the Recovery School District still isn't doing good enough. I think that we may have seen this amount of success, or this minuscule amount of success, if the schools had stayed under local control, because the schools were improving under local control. But now that the state has taken over, I really feel that as a public school parent, our voice is less. As a taxpayer, our voice in what happens with our schools is less. It seems that taking over our schools was just to set the ground to let other people come in from outside of New Orleans to come and make money off of our tax dollars.
And with that, could you talk a little bit about the importance of the upcoming BESE election? It's a runoff between the incumbent Luella Givens and the challenger Kira Orange Jones. How does the BESE election translate into what's happening here in our local public schools?
The upcoming BESE election is very, very important because Governor Jindal wants to be able to choose Recovery School District Superintendent John White as the next state superintendent of education. And he also wants to be able to put in Chaz Romer as the president of the BESE board. In order to choose John White as the superintendent, the governor will need a supermajority on the BESE board. Right now he doesn't have that. We know that Kira Orange Jones has already stated that she's in support of John White. So that would be the governor's, a definite vote in the governor's favor. I just don't think it's good for the BESE board to be a rubber stamp board for the governor. I think that the BESE board needs to represent the members, the people, the constituency in the districts from which they come. And they don't work for the governor, they work for the people. And we don't need people who are just going to go on that board and do whatever the governor wants. We don't need a BESE board if that's the case. I think that Luella Givens brings a questioning voice to the BESE board. Even though she's often outnumbered, I think that her ability to raise questions, especially for us here in New Orleans, where the majority of our schools are under state control, the BESE board is in effect our state board. And more than anything, we need someone who is going to raise the critical questions that are important to what's happening with education reform in New Orleans. And I feel comfortable that Ms. Givens, just as she has in the past, will continue to raise those questions so that those of us who pay taxes in New Orleans will get some answers. If the governor gets his way and has a rubber stamp board, I think we'll see more privatization, not just of our public schools, but all the services in the public schools. I think there will be less oversight of the huge contracts that are going to be coming forward with the $1.7 billion in construction dollars that are going to be spent. This is a time for extreme oversight. It's not a time for everybody who thinks alike to be on the board.
As a parent, could you talk about some of the specific challenges you faced during this so-called reform in our public education system?
Sure. As a parent, some of the problems I face and other parents that I work with face are what's being called a 100% choice district. The state superintendent and the local superintendent try to make us feel like we have choice. All we have is the ability to apply. And the other thing, what that also means is that we don't have a neighborhood school to fall back on. If my son gets kicked out of his current school, I have to go and apply to many different schools to find another placement for him. And I think that we should be given the right of first refusal to at least the school closest to home. I would like to know that my son can just walk around the corner and go to school. Instead, my child gets on the bus right at the corner of a school to go 11 miles away to another school. There's something wrong with that picture. And speaking of buses, I work with several parents whose children are getting on the bus at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. I have one child who gets on the bus at 6:06. He doesn't get home until 5 minutes to 7 in the evening. That's barely enough time to do his homework, eat dinner, take a bath, and go to bed. That's not the right way for our children to have to live. It deprives our children of important family time and extracurricular activities. But this is supposed to be for the best. But many parents don't feel that it's for the best.